You are listening to KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank, your partner in possible.
What's up, everyone? I'm DJ Kissel. This is KCSN Update, our daily Chiefs show and podcast here at KC Sports Network. Thanks for spending part of your day with us. Trevor Sikkema from Pro Football Focus will join me here in just a few minutes to go through his favorite stats from the Chiefs this season. But first, you know the deal. We've got a quick word coming from our partner and the presenting sponsor of this show, DraftKings. The NFL playoff picture is locked in and is my go-to place for wild card round action. You know, it's DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. To kick off the road to Super Bowl 57, new customers can bet just $5 and get $200 in free bets instantly. Plus, all new and existing customers can get a no-sweat bet each day of the wild card round this weekend. Just place any NFL bet of your choice, and if it loses, you'll get a free bet back up to $10. Action so good, why bet the NFL playoffs anywhere else? I'll be paying a lot of attention, obviously, to the game on Saturday night between the Chargers and Jags, because that's most likely who the Chiefs' opponent is going to be. But you can't tell me I'm not going to have my eye on former K-Stater Skylar Thompson heading up there to Buffalo with Tyreek Hill and company to try to knock off the Bills. But make sure you download that DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code KCSN, as new customers can bet $5 on the NFL and get $200 in free bets instantly only at DraftKings Sportsbook with code KCSN. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for details. All right, let's welcome on the Prince of NFL Stats, Pro Football Focus's Trevor Sikkema. Trevor, Matt Miller was the Prince of like NFL draft content. Nate Taylor's the Prince of Chiefs content. And then yesterday, Brett Coleman was the Prince of NFL YouTube breakdowns. So you get to be the Prince of NFL Stats to just put a nice bow on the introductions for our KCSN update crew this week.
As long as I'm royalty, I guess, like as long as I get some, I don't know, like old money, wealth, hand-me-downs, whatever it is, I guess I'll take it. So I'll take the Prince of PFF Stats or whatever it was.
I love it. I before we get into this, I'm curious. Obviously, going into the bye week, the Chiefs not playing. Mm-hmm. We were talking about what we're going to do with this show, because normally it's kind of previewing key matchups and just kind of contextualizing some statistics going into the particular matchup. Obviously, with the Chiefs not playing, change the format of this a little bit. So looking back on the regular season, we're going to get Trevor's top three or his favorite three statistics from the Chiefs regular season, and told me a little bit about it before we started recording. So I'm excited to hear this. But before that, I'm going to ask you a question, Trevor, because I've done this on all of our shows this week, and it leads to what I think is a really cool conversation. I think it kind of fits in with the stuff that you're going to bring up. It started on our Outside the Trenches show. We have a blind nil segment where each host brings a different topic, and you don't know what it's going to be, and you just spend like 10 minutes talking about it. That's like half the outline of the show. So my blind nil for this week's Outside the Trenches is, which of these two things is more impressive to you? It's one offensive stat, one defensive stat or record. On the offensive side, spent a lot of time talking about Tyreek Hill not being on the Chiefs anymore and what was going to happen to the Chiefs offense with Patrick Mahomes. He breaks Drew Brees' single season record for most yards by a quarterback, passing plus rushing. We saw one of the best seasons we've ever seen from a quarterback in terms of yards, most ever, in a year that a lot of people thought it was going to be a down year. What's more impressive, that or the fact that the Chiefs pass rush last year, they had 31 sacks as a team, ranked 29th in the NFL, dead last in the AFC. And this year, 55 sacks, which was second best in franchise history and up there as far as the NFL. And they were able to basically turn that around with just a few additions. Carlos Dunlap, George Karlaftis, Frank Clark got skinny and came in really good shape and looks like a different, got a lot more burst this year. And then Joe Cullen, I'm going to throw in there, is the new defensive line coach that came from Jacksonville, because we saw the best seasons from Mike Dana, Colin Saunders, and those guys. So what's more impressive to you, what Patrick Mahomes did putting up yardage, or what the defense did in turning around an issue that we talked about all offseason being something they had to fix, and Brett Veach did it?
Yeah, I think when you set an NFL record, you would have to say that it would be the Mahomes stat. But to me, what's more impressive is going from 29th to second, which is what they were this year. They were second in team sacks. And I'm going to dig into that with some of my statistics of what really stood out to me from this Chiefs season. But I think it's that. All due respect to Mahomes and what he's done to shut everybody up. But let's face it. I think people were probably talking about Mahomes in that light because probably a little sick of Mahomes, right? Like, let's get to something else. We've already seen Mahomes has thrown the 50 touchdowns. He's won the Super Bowl. He's got the MVP. It's like, all right, let's do something else now. So for him to have an incredible season, that is no surprise at all whatsoever. I don't mean to make light of breaking an NFL record. It's incredibly impressive, but I would say going from 29th to 2nd in the NFL in defensive line sack production, that is something that I wasn't expecting, I guess I'll say, and probably the biggest surprise to me of what the Chiefs were able to do.
It's crazy. That's a consensus now. Nobody has picked Mahomes, and we did this with 3 of us on Outside the Trenches. Brett Coleman yesterday said the same thing on the defense. And at least internally, it was like, maybe we're just biased because like it's entitlement showing. It's like, yeah, he had the best season ever, but we just expect that from him now. Like, that's who he is. He's the best. Like, there's nothing that he can do that's going to be like, man, that was really impressive. You just expect greatness from him all the time. But yeah, to fix, air quote, to fix the pass rush in the way that they did in one offseason, very similar to 2 years ago, fixing the offensive line in a lot of ways, the way that they did, signing Joe Thuney, I think the Orlando Brown trade, drafting Creed Humphrey and drafting Trey Smith after that Super Bowl performance against the Bucks, where a lot of guys were banged up, but then the next offseason or that offseason completely revamped almost the entire offensive line. And so kind of the same thing with the pass rush, but the addition of Joe Cullen has really been something for the defensive line. And looking at your 3 key stats, the defensive line, I know, is right where you want to start.
Yeah, that's where I'm going to start with it, because it is something that really stands out as a really impressive mark for the Kansas City Chiefs this season. I'm glad that you shouted out Joe Cullen. I think Joe Cullen is a great defensive line coach around this league. He's been around since, 05, 06? I think he's been in the NFL, kind of popping around to a bunch of different teams. But I mean, he's just so experienced. He's had so much success throughout his course of being an NFL coach, and for him to be able to turn around this Chiefs team, maybe not go from 29 to 2, but I mean, for them to get back from the back half of the NFL into the front half of the NFL when it comes to defensive line production, that's definitely something that's within Joe Cullen's wheelhouse, because he's done it before. The sacks, to quantify how good this defensive line has been, you mentioned it, the 55 sacks, 2nd in the NFL, only to the Philadelphia Eagles. 4th in total pressures as a team, so another top 5 mark, 325 total pressures. But then here's a stat that I really liked. We have a stat called cleaned up pressures at PFF. And cleaned up pressures is essentially how often a quarterback, while trying to navigate pressure or while trying to move in the pocket, almost runs into a defender. Like he goes into the space that the defense really clamped into. And for me, that's almost a praise of coaching, both defensive line and defensive coordinator work, because it's about where you're placing each of your defensive linemen. You're saying to yourself, okay, you're all going to align here. You're going to really collapse things from the right side of the line of scrimmage. The far left edge rusher is going to be bending around the outside shoulder, and then we're either going to have a linebacker or a corner, somebody bringing some extra pressure maybe to come around the looper, and when the quarterback steps up exactly where they want to, boom, we're going to have a guy right. We're going to have a guy right there.
We'll spread the love around. I'll go as far as like the defensive quality control coaches, and a lot of those guys that you never hear about, those coaches that they're going to be defensive coordinators in 10 years. And they're gonna be like, yeah, he worked for the Chiefs as a quality control coach. And no one ever knows what that actually means unless you talk to these guys and you understand how the coordinators and how all the position groups work. But these are the guys that are going over tendencies. And you know that, hey, when this quarterback gets a blitz off this side, he generally will escape this way, or his tendency is to go here. So you need to make sure that you stay home, that you're disciplined with whatever your rush lane, or staying true to the way that you fit inside this entire picture. To further your point, yes, 100% think that is something that you get down into those quality control coaches who work with the guys, go over tendencies, scout team stuff, that they really get into the details of that stuff. So you see some random coach or somebody on the sideline you don't know he's going nuts after a play like that, might be the quality control guy that's like, I've been taught, like I studied this stuff for hours and hours and hours to get that tendency that led to a play.
And the Chiefs, just to say the stat for this, number 1 in the NFL in this mark, 81 cleaned up or clean. We have them categorized as cleanups or pursuit pressures is what they're called. It's CUPP.
Okay.
So they're number 1 in the NFL in that regard. And I think that is just a hat tip to how they have aligned the defensive line, how they continue to align on guys like that. You and I talked earlier in the season about how they're deploying Chris Jones, when they're deploying Chris Jones as an edge rusher, but it's really just it's a full defensive line game plan. And then I did want to mention they're also ninth in the NFL in pressure percentage as a team, over 50%, 53.4%. So that's another top 10 mark. So basically all of the important marks for judging defensive line play, they're either top 3, top 5, top 10. This is just simply one of the best defensive lines in the NFL. And when you get to the playoffs, that's going to be paramount.
Love to see it. Love to see it. And as much as we talk about Chris Jones being the defensive player of the year, but again, like throughout the season, even when they've struggled and they've won some of those games that were closer than Chiefs fans wanted them to be, it was like Mike Dana. It was Colin Saunders. Same way on the offensive side, Jerick McKinnon, it just kind of came out of nowhere. Like he was always good, but to like set the NFL record for most receiving touchdowns by a running back by like almost double, or excuse me, this season doubling what anybody else did. But then being in like the top, I say tied for third for the most touchdown receptions by a running back in NFL history. Marshall Faulk is up there, and then everybody else is from like the 1960s. One guy's from like 1933, got like 11 touchdowns. It was
doesn't
crazy.
Count. Doesn't count.
Completely different game.
Yeah.
But yeah, Mike Dana, Colin Saunders, those are the guys step up, make plays. Obviously, Carlos Dunlap, George Karlaftis. It takes everybody alongside Chris Jones. But let's move on to the second stat, and it's the other side of the football, talking a little Patrick Mahomes. I'm excited about this one because I haven't heard the numbers yet, but the way you talked about it before, I'm excited to hear what these numbers are.
Yeah, I mean, you knew that one of the stats was going to have to be about Mahomes, even with me introing it by saying, "Oh yeah, he's great, cool. What else is new?" But you have to highlight when he is so incredible, and something that's specific about Mahomes that I really wanted to point out that I enjoyed learning when I was looking over some of the PFF data that we have on him is, for the last couple of years, we've talked about the rise of too high defenses, right? Too high shells, too high safeties, deploying a lot of guys in coverage and forcing these superhuman quarterbacks to be patient, right? To be a little bit more patient and not attack as far down the field, take things underneath, be a little bit more methodical, less explosive with drives, creating 7 points, and it might take a couple of more plays to do so, forcing these guys essentially to play within a smaller box, but just see if that superhuman ability isn't just within their physical gifts, with how hard they can throw the ball, how far they can throw the ball, how accurately they can throw the ball deep down the field, but saying, keep it in front of us. Can you do the same thing? Can you be an assassin, but from shorter distance? And that takes a lot. That's not just physical ability with accuracy, but it's also a lot of mental ability. So I say all that to say, last few years, we've talked about this is how you attempt to beat some of these crazy talented quarterbacks. Against too high coverages this year, Patrick Mahomes was number 1 in the NFL in terms of PFF grade, 89.6. That was about 5 points higher than any other quarterback. I think Tua Tagovailoa was second with like 84. So Mahomes, far and away the highest graded quarterback that we had versus too high defenses. This is the other stat that I loved from him. All year long, over only 2 turnover-worthy plays. And for as much as Mahomes drops back and for as much as he sees too high coverages, that was just a 1% turnover-worthy play ratio rate, which was the lowest in the NFL. He took care of the football better than anybody else did against too high coverages when it came to how many times he was dropping back. But then on top of that, it's not like Mahomes wasn't throwing the ball. He had over 1,500 passing yards against too high, which was the 4th most. So this guy had top 5 total yardage numbers against too high defenses, an efficiency level that was number 1 when it came to not putting the ball in harm's way against too high defenses, and the number 1 grade in the NFL when it came to just passing productivity against too high defenses. We were told over the last 2 years that this was the new wave. This is how you do it. You set up in too high, you make quarterbacks beat you underneath. He did. We have had so many conversations over the last, I'll say, 2 or 3 years about where Mahomes either is currently in the long lineage of quarterbacks that have existed throughout this game, or where he could end up on that list when it's all said and done. We are now, how many years has he been pro? 5, 6, what is it?
So starting for 5 years.
So we're to the point where he came out of the gate unbelievably hot. Right. And we were like,
Right.
okay, like there's got to be kind of like a cooling down period. And I mean, like there was a little bit from 50 passing touchdowns, but not really.
Sure.
And then we said, okay, now defenses are trying to catch on, right? The game, the league, it's cyclical. Defensive coordinators, they're very smart. They'll figure it out. The game always evolves. Defenses evolve to what offenses are doing. That's what we thought this was. That's what we thought this movement was. Mahomes already evolved over it. And I'm not saying that it's like he'll never throw a bad throw against too high, or that he won't have a game where he struggles against a team that plays predominantly too high. But this is now an 18-game season, or 18-week, 17-game season, where he just said, yep, I'm the best. Also, at what you said was one of my very few weaknesses. And I think that is just unbelievably impressive that he has already kind of, I don't want to say figured out, but honed his game into beating a form of coverage that we thought was going to give these guys a little bit of fits for a couple seasons.
You just kind of danced around the entire point that I thought of 2 years ago, because it's pretty early on. Like, this is the greatest quarterback that we're ever going to see in this game if he stays healthy. Like, I was on that after they won the Super Bowl. I was like, this is the dude. So then they went back and tried to repeat and lost to the Bucks. I was more mad after that, not because of obviously losing the Super Bowl, because of the selfishness of like 25 years down the road. I can envision myself arguing with a Tom Brady fan about who's the best quarterback ever. And Mahomes is going to own every record there is. And they're going to be like, but he never beat Brady in the play. Like when it mattered, Brady always won. So it's like he needed that game to be able to confirm that conversation about who's the best ever, even though they didn't play against each other. I know that, but Mahomes is going to break every passing record there is if he stays healthy and continues to play. Same thing when you look at the numbers of Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce plays football as long as Jason Witten, Antonio Gates, all those guys. Like he is going to, Tony Gonzalez, he's going to shatter all of those records.
I was going to say, he's got to be close already.
He's
right?
close now, and those guys played for like 17 years, and he's played for 10.
Yeah.
And he's within striking distance. Like, how long does he want to play? And same thing with Mahomes. Like, he's on pace. He's doing things we've never seen in every category. And love to hear that about Too High, because that was the kind of stuff like really try to hit that home with Chiefs fans, because it was Too High was talked about so much that it became a narrative that now it's, hey, that thing that people thought was an issue. Yeah, it's not really an issue anymore. All right, welcome back with Pro Football Focus's Trevor Sikkema. Trevor's given us some pretty cool stats, stuff that you can't find anywhere else other than Pro Football Focus and on this show right now, about the Chiefs' defensive line and about Patrick Mahomes going up against Too High coverages, just absolutely dominating. The third stat, Trevor, I know you've got is staying on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, it's about play action efficiency. And, you know, that I mentioned the movement that kind of Too High defenses has been over the last couple of years. I don't want to say that like play action is like a new movement or anything, but there's been a lot of emphasis on it, right? I think it's been highly publicized, the advantages that you can have when you're a team that really utilizes play action. There's been a lot of pushback, like, oh, I can't set a play action without the run game. And then there's been a lot of studies that actually debunk that. It's not really true. Really, if you are just putting any sort of deception at all whatsoever, pre-snap or even right as you're kind of snapping the ball, anything to get a defense to hesitate just a little bit could be all the edge that you need, especially for an offense like the Kansas City Chiefs have. And thankfully, this is a team that utilizes play action quite a bit, and they're really good at it. This offense as a whole had an elite 92.8 passing grade, which was first by far of any team when utilizing play action. Patrick Mahomes also had 12 big-time throws, which was first in the NFL while utilizing play action. And their EPA per play off of play action plays was 0.411. Again, far and away the best of any team. Now, does it help that you have the best quarterback in the world as the guy who, you know, fakes it to somebody and then continues to have the ball in their hands? Yes, of course it does. But this is just more evidence to tell you it works. And the Kansas City Chiefs are a team that does this quite often. It doesn't matter really what kind of coverages they're seeing. It didn't really make a difference too much pre-snap or post-snap, the different looks, how many defenders they had in the box, because I looked up light boxes, heavy boxes, whatever it is. This is just a team that's going to utilize play action because they get the value of it. They understand that even if guys at the linebacker level play disciplined all game long, right? Three straight quarters, great disciplined football, not biting for play action. If you run it one time in the fourth quarter and they bite on one play, that one play might be the entire difference. And the only way you know if that's going to happen for sure is if you run it. And so this is a team that just understands the philosophies of deception as an advantage in any way. Obviously, they had the what are they? I don't know what they're calling it. The drum circle, the
Arctic Circle,
whatever they call. What did you say?
Coach called it Arctic Circle. One of the players called it Circle of Death, and Kent Swanson for us in the moment called it the Kadera Circle, which is pretty amazing to come up with. That's exactly how Kent's brain works. But Arctic Circle seems to be the most popular way that it's being described.
Now that play obviously was kind of silly, right? Like it was a silly play, but it goes to show you that Andy Reid and Eric Bieniemy and Patrick Mahomes understand that all it takes is the slightest bit of hesitation. If one player on defense is sitting here laughing at this merry-go-round circle instead of thinking about exactly where he needs to go, guess what? That's an advantage. That's probably all the hesitation you need to complete a pass to Kadarius Toney or Travis Kelce or Mecole Hardman or Marquez Valdes-Scantling or wherever the ball is going to go. It doesn't matter. It's just that I wanted to point that out with play action to just show and boast a little bit that this team understands what works, and they do it often. And other teams in the NFL should probably take a hint. I know Chiefs fans out there are like, no, go ahead. Let us be the kings of play action. But it just goes to show you how much success that you can have if you consistently run it.
Yeah, the play action, the screen game. I mean, things that Andy Reid, when you watch him practice, Trevor, you come out to a training camp and to see the level of detail that they get into, how quickly they go from one play to the next. And, you talk about coaching, and a lot of people think play calls, this and that. Andy Reid prides himself as a teacher, and not necessarily himself teaching the players, but teaching the coaches how to teach the players the most effective way to get the most out of them. And it's really just a great system in which he has developed his ability to get the finer details right as to what is it about the play action pass that are causing the manipulation on the defense to go where you want them to go to put yourself in an advantageous position. He really does a great job of communicating that and then working on the finer details. And when you really watch him practice, even going back to OTAs, and you see the way the coaches are working with the guys, there's a reason why they have that success. It's not just because of talent. It's because of coaching and teaching and their ability to convey what they're trying to do. All right, Trevor, before we let you go, I want to get your thoughts on the AFC wildcard playoff games this weekend. I think two of them probably not going to be all that great. Got a couple third-string quarterbacks going on the road as underdogs. That's going to be tough on Sunday. Let's start with a game Saturday night, most likely going to be the Chiefs' opponent. Is the winner of the Chargers-Jags game. Again, that's kicking off at 7:15 Central Time on NBC. How do you see this one playing out?
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this game. This is one of the closest matchups that we have, I think, during Super Wild Card weekend, and it's fun, right? It's Trevor Lawrence, it's Justin Herbert, it's two of the best young quarterbacks in the game. Which one's going to show up? I'm leaning Chargers. I'm leaning that I think the Chargers are going to win this game. They've just got more experience, and something that I was really happy about last week when the Jags beat the Titans is the fact that no matter what the result was going to be, we were going to get some more Doug Peterson, Trevor Lawrence, and just overall Jacksonville Jaguars playoff experience for them, to get to host a playoff game and to kind of get that new off of them. So hopefully this team is one that could be a lot of fun and a postseason team over the next couple of years as they're kind of growing. So even though I think this game is important for them, I just watch how they played last week, and unless it looks really different, I'm not expecting the defense to show up on the scoreboard the way that it did against the Titans. And that was a Titans team that's not good. Like, I get that it's a divisional opponent, but they were starting Josh Dobbs. They had no receivers to throw to. It was just the offensive line's banged up, and they couldn't beat that Titans team without a strip sack recovery for a touchdown. And so I've got more confidence in the Chargers in this one. I think the Chargers are going to pull it out.
All right, let's move on to the games on Sunday. The Fighting Skylar Thompsons heading up to Buffalo to take on the team that everybody in the country at some level is rooting for, to win games with everything going on in Buffalo with Damar Hamlin. It seems like the news that keeps coming out every time I check social media, there's more good news coming out about Damar Hamlin, which is phenomenal to see. But is there a path for a Skylar Thompson-led team with a banged-up Raheem Mostert on top of that to go to Buffalo and to knock off the Bills at home?
250 yards by Tyreek Hill. Like, that's probably the only way this happens. Because even the defense has been very up and down for the Miami Dolphins. They don't have the firepower. I don't know what the line is. Was it? I think it was like 9.5 the last time I looked. I think the Bills. Right. I think the Bills win this game by double digits. Like, I just don't think that it's out of Miami's element. Quite literally, it's in Buffalo. They're going to be motivated there at home, and I just cannot imagine this Skylar Thompson team really sticking it to Buffalo in this one. I think Buffalo is going to win by double digits.
Yeah, that's going to be tough. When talking with Brett Coleman, he talked a lot about the Dolphins running game and how good they are at that. And that if Raheem Mostert was healthy with the way that the Bills have struggled at times to stop the run, that there is it's a narrow path, but there was still more of a path. But now that Raheem Mostert's out, I was like, I don't know about that path. All right, let's go to the other one. Another third string, I think probably even in a worse situation with what Baltimore's dealing with. Lamar Jackson's been out for 6 weeks with his knee injury. Tyler Huntley not throwing right now with I think tendonitis in his shoulder. So what's going to happen with Baltimore? Is there any chance for Baltimore to go to a red hot Cincinnati team and beat the Bengals on the road?
No. I would be betting Cincinnati heavy even if Lamar was playing. I'd be betting Cincinnati heavy. This is, simply put, one of the best teams, one of the hottest teams, and one of the teams that continues to play well at home. Cincinnati has been an unbelievable home field advantage for this team over the last year and a half. I think they've only, since the middle of December last year, Cincinnati has only lost one home game. And it happened to be that Steelers game at the beginning of the year, which was like, all due respect to the Steelers, like a BS loss because Joe Burrow hadn't played in so long and he was coming off injury. So, I mean, he wasn't even warm. He was barely getting in the quarterback position, and it took them overtime to beat Cincinnati there. Home field advantage has just been huge for Cincinnati. I'd be taking them even if Lamar was healthy in this one. I think it's a massive mismatch. The game that they played last week, what was it, 24-0? I mean, the final score was not any indication of how this game actually went because the final score was closer than what the game actually was. I think Cincinnati, again, wins this one by double digits.
Yeah, Cincinnati's favored by 9.5. The Dolphins, the Bills are favored by 13.
Yeah.
In that game. So Vegas even don't even think that thing is going to be close. And then the Chargers going on the road to the Jags are actually favored by 2.5.
It's a 2.5. Wow.
Yeah, so 2.5. Plus you get 3 points at home. So I think 5.5 points at a neutral site for the Chargers. So Vegas and the odds are leaning in your favor there as well. Again, talking with Pro Football Focus's Trevor Sikkema, host of the It's Just Football podcast, a daily show that he does alongside Mike Renner. Get all kinds of cool stats and nuggets like this, not just for the Chiefs opponent and what they do during the season, but for the entire NFL. And help if you make your bets at DraftKings, you get plenty of good information to help you become a more knowledgeable fan by checking out their podcast. Trevor, anything else that you got coming up that you want to plug that Chiefs fans should check out or NFL football fans should check out?
Watching the show, It's Just Football. We're having a blast. We're covering the league as much as we can. We're having a lot of fun trivia as well. If you guys love football trivia, we do that on Thursday. Little nugget for football trivia. I'll give you one before we get out of here. We were looking up all sorts of playoff stats, and this one isn't Chiefs related, so I'm sorry, but I just thought of it. Marshawn Lynch has the most missed tackles forced of any running back that we've charted since the PFF era, which is since 2006. Okay, we're talking total in their career. Marshawn Lynch has 75 missed tackles forced just in the postseason throughout his career. In second place behind him is Derrick Henry with 25.
What?
Marshawn Lynch has 50 more missed tackles forced in the postseason than the second place running back since 2006.
That's pretty good. I'm going to take you that stat. I'm going to raise you one, at least locally, because it's a Chief stat. We talk about it all the time. Locally, everyone's like, I know what he's about to say. Frank Clark, 5th all-time in NFL history in postseason sacks. He gets 1 sack in the divisional round. He ties this guy named Reggie White.
Heard of him.
For 4th most sacks.
Yep.
He gets 5.5 somehow, and don't put it past Frank because we've seen him go off in a playoff. He gets 5.5 sacks in 3 playoff games. They go to the Super Bowl. All-time leader in career postseason sacks in NFL history. Give him all the money you want. He gets it done when it matters. Need Frank, Chris, and company to step up, but
he's number one, I think, since 2006. I
he's
believe
the only active player that's close to him. Von Miller has 10.5. So he has the most sacks of any active player in the NFL in postseason history. Although Nick Bosa is coming. He's only been in the league for 4 years. He's got 8 postseason sacks, and he's like 25 years old. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Nick Bosa's halfway to leading that. As long as, say, the fighting Brock Purdy's keep getting to the playoffs and he gets an opportunity. Yeah. Nick Bosa's gonna have that record if they keep going to the playoffs. But yeah, Frank Clark.
He's an animal.
Gets 4 sacks, so 1.5, however you want to figure that out. He'll be second all time. So Bruce Smith is second all time with 14.5. Frank Clark right now is 11. And then Terrell Suggs is in third with 12.5. Reggie White with 12. Frank's actually tied with a few other guys with 11 sacks. Dwight Freeney, Charles Haley, James Harrison, Clay Matthews, Lamar Woodley. Some guys you've heard of. So
yes.
Pretty good stuff there.
That's amazing.
All right, that's all we've got for today's KCSN update. Again, appreciate you all for hanging out. Enjoy the weekend, whether you're listening to this, watching this show on Friday. Enjoy the playoff games on Saturday, Sunday, and the Monday night one between the Dallas Cowboys and the Tampa Bay Bucks as we figure out who the Chiefs are going to play and host at Arrowhead Stadium in the divisional round. Again, we know there's a lot of great places to get your Chiefs content. We appreciate KC Sports Network being one of them. Hope you all have a great weekend, and we'll see you next time.